Hey everybody, it's right in the middle of home buying season, and some of you may be thinking about buying your first home. You've been renting for a while, you're ready to build up equity in your house, or maybe you're in your first home right now and you're thinking about expanding a little to a bigger second home, or maybe even a third home. But as you think about these decisions, I wanted to walk through what the real cost of buying a home is, both from an ongoing standpoint as well as that initial year, because the purchase in that initial year of home ownership is pretty expensive. So a couple of costs that I'm going to throw up here, I think a lot of you are familiar. A lot of people are thinking about the monthly cost of their home. They're really focused on that mortgage payment. So, you got your mortgage. You have your property tax. And your insurance. And then of course, if you don't put 20% down on your home, you're gonna have PMI, or private mortgage insurance, excuse me. So we'll put PMI here. And these right here are what people are typically thinking about when they try to figure out, can they afford a home? Now, there are some other things that I think you should be considering that maybe you haven't thought about. For example, maintenance. Seems pretty obvious that you'll have to maintain your home. And what should you assume for maintenance? I tend to say that it should be 1% of the home price. So what that means, I guess you would divide it by 12 to get your monthly number on roughly what you should expect for maintenance. 1% tends to be a pretty good guess. Of course, you'll also have home services. And home services, if you're renting, could be new. If you're buying a bigger home, it might just mean that they're more expensive, particularly if they're things like lawn or cleaning, pest control, all sorts of stuff. So we got maintenance, we got home services, improvements, of course. Everybody wants to improve their new house. I could do a catch-all called other. Has stuff like utilities, dues. So some people have neighborhood dues. Maybe there's assessments. And then finally, of course, people want to talk about the tax savings. Tax savings are maybe not as prevalent as they were prior to the tax reform a few years ago. The way that the standard deduction has changed has really reduced the way that people are using that. So these are, some monthly costs to think about. Now, that first year you move, I mentioned that there were a lot of other costs that people tend to forget about. I think the biggest ones are closing costs. And closing costs will tend to be between 2 and 5% of the amount you borrow. So we'll go 2% to 5% of amount borrowed. Closing costs, you have your broker fees. Those are pretty large. I really think that using a real estate agent is really important. They catch a lot of things that you aren't thinking about. They do save you a lot of time, but it is 4% to 7% of the total home price. Finally, you're going to have to move. Moving is not free, so you should try to figure out what is the moving cost going to be. What repairs are you going to have to make at the new home? You might also have to make some repairs at your existing home if you're going to sell your existing home. And then finally, furnishing. I've never heard of someone who buys a home and doesn't have some sort of new furnishings that they want or desire or end up saving for. So again, as you're thinking about trying to evaluate the true cost of a home, here's your monthly output that you really need to consider. And it's not just this monthly payment, it's some of the ongoing stuff that you don't want to let slip through the cracks. And then you have these big one-time costs that are associated with the purchase of a home. It's these costs in particular that make it really important that if you can't picture a scenario where you live in that house for at least 10 years, you probably shouldn't live in that house. Now, you don't have to stay in the house for 10 years, but it does take about 5 or 7 years to break even on a 30-year mortgage with all these closing costs and broker costs. If you don't live there for 5, 6, 7 years. So it's really important to remember housing is just a big piece of consumption. Nothing wrong with that. It's a place where you spend a lot of time, but try to be conscious of the costs and try to think of it less as an investment and as a place to live. Thanks for watching. If you want any more information on where you can improve your finances, go to smartmoneyquiz.com. Quick 9-question quiz that will direct you to the best place to focus your attention on right now. Have a great day.